Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever it might be for you today. We've got another short story for you today. Now, as you will have seen, we are back to playing games. I had originally planned to release this one along with the other short stories that I did during our break, but I realized that some of my players might have been watching these short stories, and I didn't want to spoil this one before they got into the dungeon for obvious reasons. You'll work that out once you see who's involved in the story. And this one was an interesting one for me because the characters that I'm looking at here are names that are pulled out of the original White Plume Mountain story. But within that, they don't really have any background, any reasoning for being there. They're just kind of two people stuck in a dungeon. And it never really made sense to me. So I decided, for my version of White Plume, the Adventurer's Amusements, that I was going to go a little bit of a different way with these two. So I did. I wrote up this story. I did it fully figuring that the group was probably going to charge in there and murder them. And then I was going to have a good laugh whenever they found out that these two actually had a background. Turns out they didn't kill them, so that could prove interesting in the future. We'll see where it goes. But for now, enjoy this story of Burkett and Snarla and their early days before finding their way into Adventurer's Amusements.
The town of Oakcleave lay nestled along the road that wound its way between the ancient woodlands, the dark forest to the northwest, and the bright forest to the southeast. To those who called it home, it was a quiet place of labor and tradition, a town where every face was familiar and every story well known. Among the rolling fields and rich pastures just beyond the town's border stood the vast estate of Lord Garrick, a man of wealth and reputation. His lands were well kept, his crops bountiful, and his horses prized among traders and travelers alike. Among the many hands who toiled upon his farm was James Burkett, a young stable hand of 20 summers. Raised in the scent of hay and the warmth of the stables, he had a quiet way with animals, a talent that set him apart from the other hired help. But James's heart was not merely given to the creatures under his care. It belonged to Snarla, the daughter of Lord Garrick himself. Snarla had been raised in a world of wealth and expectation, her days spent in the comforts of her father's home, her future arranged in whispered conversations behind heavy doors. Yet none of that mattered when she was with James. Their love was stolen in fleeting moments, soft words exchanged in the golden light of the barn, stolen glances across the fields, hands brushing against each other beneath the oak boughs where they met in secret. She had first taken notice of him when he was but a boy, newly hired, his hands ever gentle with the horses. Over the years, as they both grew, so did the quiet, unspoken bond between them, until it blossomed into something undeniable. Yet they both knew her father would never approve. Lord Garrick had plans for his daughter, and they did not include a stable hand, so they remained careful. Their love a whispered thing. Something only the stars bore witness to when they met in the hush of the night. It was on one such night that the attack came. James had been waiting for Snarla near the old oak, just beyond the fields, when he heard the first scream. A terrible, guttural howl tore through the darkness, followed by the shouts of men and the panicked braying of the horses. The farm was under siege. Racing back, James beheld a nightmare. Half-man, half-wolf creatures stalked the estate, their eyes burning with an unnatural hunger. The farmhands fought where they could, but the beasts were too strong, too swift. Blood stained the soil, and the fires from overturned lanterns cast eerie shadows across the land. James had but one thought: Snarla. He found her within the house, her face streaked with tears, her hands trembling as she clutched a fire poker. Her mother lay still beside her, and through the open door of the study he could see Lord Garrick's lifeless form sprawled over his desk. "James!" she sobbed, running into his arms. "We have to go," he whispered. pressing a kiss against her forehead before pulling her away. The creatures were inside, their growls reverberating off the walls. They fled through the back door, into the night, towards the safety of the forest. But one of the beasts was faster. It lunged from the darkness, its claws raking across James's shoulder as he pushed Snarla behind him. He swung wildly with a rusted pitchfork, driving the creature back, but not before its fangs sank into Snarla's arm. She screamed in pain, and James barely managed to pull her away before another attacked. Bleeding and breathless, they ran. For 3 days they fled, moving south along the roads that led to Brightwater. Snarla grew weaker, the wound on her arm festering despite James's best efforts. Her skin burned with fever, her breath shallow, her nails digging into her own flesh as if she were trying to claw her way out of her own body. And then the full moon rose. James awoke to find her gone from their camp. Following the sounds of ragged breathing and snapping twigs, he found her crouched in the darkness, her back arched, her limbs twisted unnaturally. Her eyes, once warm and bright, were now golden and wild. "Snarla?" he called gently. She turned toward him, and for a moment he saw only hunger in her gaze. Then she lunged. James barely managed to throw himself back, the swipe of her claws catching only air where his throat had been. He did not reach for his blade. He would not, could not, hurt her. "Snarla, please," he gasped as she snarled, circling him. "It's me, it's James." She leapt again, but something in his voice, something in the love that had always bound them, made her falter. Her claws stopped inches from his chest, her body trembling as she fought against the beast inside her. Then, with a tortured cry, she fell to the ground, curling into herself, her breathing ragged and uneven. James knelt beside her, wrapping his cloak around her shaking form. He held her close as her sobs racked through her, whispering promises of love and oaths of protection. He would not leave her, not now, not ever. They reached Brightwater 2 nights later. The city, bustling and bright, felt like another world compared to the horrors they had left behind. They found shelter in a nameless inn, Snarla's hood drawn low to hide her pallor, her hands wrapped in cloth to conceal the sharpness of her nails. It was there that they met him, a man who claimed he could cure her. "For a price," he said, sliding a parchment before them. Desperate, exhausted, and without other options, they agreed without hesitation, believing that Snarla's cure would be given immediately. James took her hand, and together they signed. The two looked down at the signed page, and only then did the truth resonate within them. 10,000 gold, 20 years of service. "You will be placed in service immediately," the man said smoothly. "Your duties will be simple ones. Feeding creatures, clearing the dead. We will set course for Titan immediately. Lord Shanshara will be most pleased." James felt a chill creep up his spine. "And Snarla's cure?" The man's eyes glinted with something unreadable. "Upon the completion of your contract." The weight of their mistake sank in like a stone in water. "After," Burkett whispered, confused. 20 years. A lifetime of darkness. They had signed away their freedom, and Snarla's curse would remain until their servitude was fulfilled. The door behind them locked with an ominous click, sealing their fate in the shadows below.